Holder affected by the 2009 British American Insurance Company Limited collapse. Register now to be a part of the legal action filed in the Caribbean Court of Justice to obtain fair and just compensation. Registration closes soon. Dr. Patrick Antoine, president of Bacol, has more.
If the court comes back in September and says, okay, let's go, case management, CMC, we're going to have in the middle of September. We want to have everyone on board by, certainly before that, because we have to do some due diligence and checking and making sure that, everything's, in order, because this is going to be heavily scrutinized. So I would say next 30 days. I've gone, again, the long route, so you understand why. I would want to do it within 30 days. In short, the end of August.
Even if you've already received a payment from the judicial managers, you are still eligible to register for this legal action.
Absolutely. I received 14% just like you, and I'm part of the action. In fact, most of us should have received at least 14 cents now. That would be, I say at least because many people who had smaller amounts have been completely paid out. 14 cents, yes, that's precisely who this action's for. This action's for people who have, right, the other 86 cents that's jumping up somewhere that we run the risk of not getting. That's why we're here. We want all our money. And just in case I didn't tell you, we're also going after the interest, and we are going after anything else that the lawyers determine. So the idea is from the time that the Trinidad and Tobago policyholders were paid until the time that we are paid, we are asking to recognize that we've been deprived of the right to use our money and to benefit from it, and that there should be an applicable interest rate attached to every year that we've not been afforded the opportunity to do that.
The application for special leave was recently filed with the CCJ. Gregory Pandon, instructing attorney, explains.
We have filed the application to the CCJ for special leave, which is really asking the CCJ to give us permission to advance the substantive case, which is the standard approach to get the CCJ moved in its jurisdiction, in its original jurisdiction. Its original jurisdiction is a compulsory and exclusive jurisdiction that deals with the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas and the treaty obligations. That is where we find this case has been built. So this case involves several different points of complaint about the treaty, if you call it rights, of Caribbean nationals and the policyholders in particular, as well as the treaty obligations upon the state of Trinidad, of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the breach of which has left the policyholder members of Bacol and policyholders within the region, as I will put it, aggrieved. They are hurting. They have not been compensated to the same measure as their similarly circumstanced Trinidad and Tobago CARICOM nationals. And that is the inequality that we have seen, inequality of treatment, and that is one of the fundamental bases of this action.
British American policyholders across the OECS have endured extreme hardship since the collapse of the company.
I had to do surgeries, about several surgeries in Canada. Therefore, I needed my money then. That is what we save your money for. Look at where you're meeting me now. I am sick. In January, I had a neurological problem that I collapsed. I have to walk with a stick. At my age, I'm 74, almost 75 years. And I cannot sit home and retire like a sick person. I am on medication. I need to see a neurologist. They told me, the doctors told me finally, but I don't have money to go anywhere.
And then in 2013, they refund me a meager $30,000. And with that $30,000, it never reached my hand because I owed the bank. It hit me hard.
Church invested over $500,000, over $500,000. And because of the collapse, there are many, many things we are unable to do, including even paying our ministers. We are unable to do outreach programs. You know, we are a Christian body. We go into the communities, we help people less fortunate, and a number of things we do as a church. And of course, we have overhead operating expenses and all that. And we are really, really in a financial bind because of this whole collapse.
My mom, she lost both her savings and my cousins, her niece, my cousins, life savings. That was her main regret.
My insurance broker, I used to come and collect insurance because I was insured with the house was insured with him. And he told me about this investment. He said, had a little bit of money in the bank and I was getting 6% at the time. And he told me, if you invest that money with us, we could give you 8%. That investment was to boost my pension. To boost my pension. I mean, I'm getting a little pension, but after 32 years, it don't match up. I mean, do you think of the cost of living 32 years ago to now? So I had that little money there. I said, well, that will give me a little bit extra interest to boost my pension. As the cost of living goes up, it don't keep in line with the pension. So that's the position I'm in now.
As an agent, you mean every month, 5% of my income, of my commissions, was paid into a pension fund. The pension come to me. I had to start from scratch. As a manager, I was affected. As a client, I was affected because I had investments too. So I lost money like anybody else.
It hit me hard because I'm going to tell you what. 3 of my 4 boys was in college. They had to pull out. I had to dig real deep to save these lands. I used to sit in the bush and cry. Even my wife wanted to further her study and she couldn't. I nearly lost my family.
Give us our monies. Give us our monies. It's not a want, it's a need. And I can't overemphasize the need, especially at this time. We have members suffering, people who are unemployed. We have members who have disability problem issues, who have health issues.
When you are not able to meet needs, that is what caused me to get this discomfort, this imbalance. Because the stress of it.
I feel betrayed. I feel conned. Whatever word you could use to describe, that's how I feel.
It's not fair. It cannot be fair.
Boy, I want my money if interest, behave all yourself, Bacol, hey, I want to tell all you go for it because not only me, but lots of senior citizens like me are suffering. Their lifetime savings, some of them came from England with their little money in the bank and they take it and trust British American with it. That is serious business. And it would mean so much to me.
I just hope that the Lord spare my life to be alive still when this thing comes true.
Bacol's president, Dr. Patrick Antoine, pointed out that a special risk-free arrangement has been made for policyholders who cannot afford to make the financial contribution necessary to register for the action.
We set about trying to find a facility that would still allow people who didn't have anything left to participate in this initiative. Still, after all, for us, it would be a tragedy if people having $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 couldn't participate with us because they couldn't afford $1,200, $2,000 EC dollars. And so what we did is that we created a structure after discussions with many of the firms, and that's all set up now, where the contribution, not the membership fee of $150, but the contribution, which is against the investment itself, can be borrowed from an institution called MyFi Finance in Grenada. And in exchange for that borrowing, right, for what your contribution should be, that $1,200 I mentioned in the case of the 200,000 portfolio, you can borrow that from MyFi, and if there is success, then they deduct 1% of what you actually get back as their fee. If there is no success, you don't pay anything. But it speaks to the way in which I think we've had to just tap every source to make sure that we leave no one behind. And so that risk-free financing, which really came to the fore given the circumstances in Dominique and St. Vincent, is really a facility that we have for individuals who would find themselves hard-pressed. So we don't want someone not to be able to participate because they can't afford $2,000, $1,000+, and that's what this is for. This is really a special facility for people who are hard-pressed because we don't want to leave anyone behind. You have to pay nothing back if there is no success from the court.
Register now for your opportunity to obtain financial justice.
This has been a painful journey. It has been a journey that's been fraught with many of our fellow policyholders not being here with us today. I can think of many in Grenada and many in the other countries who have left policies to their family but who died in destitution, in poverty. I can tell you of stories, but one stands out where a colleague of mine took his life when he lost the substantial mortgage taken by his wife and himself. Without her permission, he put it in British American to benefit from the interest rate over the period for which he was told there was no risk having regard to the integrity of the institution. Unfortunately, it got caught in the meltdown and he could not face his family, so he took the other option. This has been a painful ride. Personally, I had myself come face to face with this initiative when I had a family member who had a head-on collision and required emergency surgery. And it is only then that I got a very small part of my own investment back. But in so doing, I had to literally send every bit of information from every surgeon, hospital. I mean, it was just really, really, really probing, right? Almost dehumanizing for your own money, mind you. But others weren't so lucky. Others have died of brain tumors. They've taken their kids out of school. You know, they've had to close their businesses down. This has been an awful, awful journey, one which I wish I didn't have the honor of leading, but I was called upon to do it, and I have with my board, and I want to give them tremendous credit for standing with me in very tough times as we have achieved that which many times we felt we could not have. A very strong case, very strong legal team, very strong case managers that we've managed to put together to take this matter to court. We just invite you to bring all of your friends and family on board with us. Let us approach the court as one united OECS. Let us give the court the weight of the burden of considering the implication of this for CARICOM, when so many citizens would have placed themselves at the belief of the treaty only to have the community and what it promised, not live up to what was in fact inscribed in treaty. So thank you very much. Let us do that which we must. Let us approach the court as the broadest cross-section of OECS citizens ever to have graced the hallowed halls of the CCJ with their presence. And we can do this. We can speak in one clear, loud voice. Look at what we've done with limited resources. If we join ourselves up, I'm sure that victory will be ours. And the truth is feeling that. I feel very proud that we stood to be counted. I don't know how I, as a Caribbean OECS educated person, would have ever faced my family, friends, neighbors, relatives, friends of my parents, knowing that, we didn't even fight. We just let it go. That's just amazing. And I want to just thank you for joining us in that fight.
On July 13th, 2021, the British American and Glencoe policyholders group Bacol filed a legal action in the Caribbean Court of Justice on behalf of its members. The action seeks to obtain fair and just compensation for British American policyholders after the 2009 collapse of the British American Insurance Company Limited. The following is a presentation by Mr. Simon Davenport, Queen's Counsel, about the nature of the case before the Caribbean Court of Justice.
The honor is really all mine to represent this group in such an important matter affecting so many people across the Eastern Caribbean. It is an honor to work with the team that we have. It is ably and, may I say, inspiringly led by Dr. Patrick Antoine, who has brought all the talents together. It is a privilege to work with the leading figures in the Caribbean legal firmament, including, but certainly not limited to, Gregory Pantin and his able assistant, Miguel Vasquez, Dr. Kenny Anthony, former Prime Minister and senior political and legal figure throughout the Caribbean, and so many others. I would also like to add my particular thanks and my special regret that we do not have with us at the moment Ambassador Gerald Thompson. From the very beginning, he was integral in building the foundations of the house, without which we could not really have proceeded. And if we get justice, as surely we should, for this group, then the justice will be very largely down to the efforts and inspiration of him, as well as Dr. Patrick Antoine and those other leaders of their fields that I have mentioned, together with the other team. I would like to introduce my own UK team from my own set of chambers, Three Hare Court. A little word about Three Hare Court. There's really been no chambers, I say this with some modesty, that has had such a special link in terms of the work and the cultural, I think, understanding and the sympathy and indeed empathy throughout the whole of the bar in England and Wales as a Three Hare Court. We have conducted cases throughout the Eastern and other parts of the Caribbean on behalf of any number of particular parties, and we are honoured to work in the Caribbean. I have the privilege of being the co-head, the joint head of chambers of Three Hare Court. And I carry the best wishes of this chambers with me to the interests of all this group. And I've got two brilliant juniors, senior juniors from this team. I have got the omnipresent Robert Strang, who is building the case with me as a general commercial and constitutional lawyer. And with me, I have got Professor Matthew Happold from my team, who is a specialist professor in treaty law, which is so valuable in this particular case. So that together is the team. So what's it all about? I suspect you know, who are listening, the nature of the problem, but let me just outline it again, and then let me explain what the legal solution we hope is. Everybody in the Eastern Caribbean is familiar with the collapse of the conglomerate CL Financial, CLF I will call it, and its insurance subsidiaries, Clico and British American. The effects were catastrophic and they were widespread right across the Eastern Caribbean. One reason for the collapse, and a reason why the effects were felt so widely, was that CLF had been raising money via Clico and British American by selling high interest rate annuity products. They were called, as you probably remember, EFPAs, Executive Flexible Premium Annuities. Those financial products were bought by tens of thousands of investors right across the Eastern Caribbean. CLF used the proceeds to invest in assets, some of them, regrettably, highly illiquid. That means not liquid. When CLF collapsed, it simply didn't have the funds in liquid assets to cover its liabilities to those investors. In Trinidad and Tobago, the government stepped in. it took emergency control of CLECO and the Trinidad and Tobago arm of British American. Now, an important point to remember is that British American had a Trinidad and Tobagoan arm, British American Trinidad, or BAT. And it also had a regional arm, BAICO, I'll call it, or British American. British American sold to Trinidad and Tobagoan customers in the name of BAT, and to other Caribbean customers, non-Trinidadian and Tobagoan customers, in the name of British American, or BICO. The Trinidad and Tobago government forced CLF to agree to make available all of its assets to make good the deficit in CLECO and BAT. And it advanced government funds to CLECO and BAT as well. The result of those actions of the Trinidad and Tobago government was that all the customers of CLECO and BAT were protected. In the end, they have been able to recover the full value of their investments. But the non-Trinidad and Tobago customers, so many that they number, of British American were not protected at all. They have received and recovered only about 14% or thereabouts of the liquidation, or through the liquidation of British American, just 14%. The Trinidad and Tobago government declined to intervene to protect them, saying that British American was not regulated by the Trinidad and Tobago authorities. That's key. The other member states of CARICOM for years have pressed Trinidad and Tobago government to do more for the non-Trinidad and Tobago customers of British American. But the government of Trinidad and Tobago, having promised to pay at least something towards the shortfall, in the event only paid a tiny fraction of the money. It has refused all political pressure. It has not given way to all moral pressure or moral persuasion, and it has not recognized the legal rights. That is why legal action is necessary to restore those rights. So that's the problem. Now, let me outline what the legal action is about. The legal action relies on Trinidad and Tobago's obligations under the relevant treaty, and that treaty is the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. The treaty set up a common Caribbean economic community, CARICOM, and by the treaty member states, including Trinidad and Tobago, they agreed 4 things at least. First, not to permit discrimination on grounds of nationality. Second, to remove actively restrictions on cross-border trade in goods and services. 3, not to permit discrimination on grounds of nationality in the provision of services. And fourthly, to apply consumer protection provisions without discrimination on the grounds of nationality. The treaty permits private individuals to bring claims in the Caribbean Court of Justice if their rights under the treaty are infringed. The case now issued freshly by the customers of British American alleges that Trinidad acted in breach, squarely in breach, of its treaty obligations and discriminated against them on the grounds of nationality. The point of the case is that British American was a Trinidadian company, Trinidadian and Tobago company, just like BAT. In effect, they were the same company, but with different categories of customer. The material difference was that BAT had Trinidadian customers and British American had non-Trinidadian and Tobagan customers. So there are three complaints which we will expand upon legally. First, in effect, the Trinidadian and Tobagan government rescued the Trinidadian and Tobagan customers of British American, but not its non-Trinidad and Tobago customers. Furthermore, secondly, it actively harmed British American by requiring that CLF's assets could only be used to help CLECO and BAT. And third, at least, it has attempted to justify its actions as being in accord with a regulatory regime that only protected the Trinidadian customers of British American and not the non-Trinidadian and Tobago. All those actions, say our clients, the group, discriminated against them on the basis of their nationality and were in breach of the treaty obligations clearly set out that bound Trinidad and Tobago. They intend, by this application, to ask the Caribbean Court of Justice to enforce the obligations binding Trinidad and Tobago. The first step is to apply to the Caribbean Court of Justice for special leave. So this is the process. So we apply to the Caribbean Court of Justice for special leave in order to commence substantive legal proceedings on behalf of that group, our clients, whose rights under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas were infringed due to Trinidad's breach of its treaty obligations. At this special leave stage, which will probably be about a one-day hearing, and probably in a few months' time, we will ask the Caribbean Court of Justice to agree that there is an arguable case and that our clients should be permitted to bring this claim. That's called special leave. So we are seeking special leave to bring the claim. The claim so far has been brought, as you've heard, by groups from Grenada and Antigua. But as you've heard, we intend to add policyholders from further countries if permission, that special leave is granted. About the treaty, what I'm talking about, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. And I'd like to say a little bit about the Caribbean Court of Justice. So the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas is a best representation of the Caribbean's attempt, a successful attempt, to transform the region into creating a Caribbean common market and a community, basically strengthening the Eastern Caribbean. The revised Treaty of Chaguaramas was dated from 2001, the original being in 1973. And the need for amendments were arising because, as happens periodically, there were economic difficulties on a worldwide and regional scale, stemming from oil crises, diminished regional integration, and intra-regional trade, together with ineffective state policies at the time, and to enable member states to formally commit to transforming the institutional and legal structures of that CARICOM environment. The original treaty was considered really to be necessary. So those pillars that I've identified of regional integration rest upon the RTC, and it's characterized by the four freedoms that I told you about in terms of non-discriminatory ability to establish yourself, to provide services, to move your capital, and to move CARICOM nationals. And the all-important court hearing this is the successful, and I think ever will be more successful, Caribbean Court of Justice, established in 2002, in effect. And it was tasked with the compulsory and exclusive jurisdiction to hear and determine disputes concerning the interpretation and the application of that treaty, including all of the disputes between the member states and relevant parties to it, and the community itself. Referrals from national courts of the member states parties to the RTC, and in particular applications by private entities, including natural and legal persons. So by virtue of the rights enshrined in the treaty, the CCJ is provided with what's described as a fertile ground for the resolution of corporate trade disputes, and has done so admirably since its first and seminal decision delivered in 2008. And over the past 13 years or so, the CCJ has adjudicated on a number of issues involving the Treaty of Chaguaramas, as revised, including external tariffs, free movements within the community, human rights issues, administrative procedures and judicial review, and the classification of goods in general. The court has also, as I've said, exclusive jurisdiction to deliver advisory opinions concerning how the treaty should be interpreted, a jurisdiction which has been evoked since 2019, relatively new. The decisions of the CCJ and its original jurisdiction are pleasingly final and binding. And in that sense, that there are no appeals from it, and it is considered to be legally binding precedent on all of the parties to the decision. So it is of immense and immediate importance. It's not going to be lost in the mists of time and endless appeals. So the CCJ is without doubt the custodian or guardian of the treaty, and is one of the absolute cornerstones for regional integration. And this case represents a great opportunity, not just for this group, not just for the Eastern Caribbean, not just, by the way, for the government of Trinidad and Tobago, who can shape up and who can obey that moral conscience and give rise to social justice in the way that is sought, social financial justice, by not contesting, or alternatively only contesting on a limited range of issues. But it is an immense opportunity for the CCJ, frankly, to stand up and be counted where it most has impact to citizens across the CARICOM region. And the CCJ has been described uniquely positioned to ensure that the promise offered by the text of the RTC, the treaty, is translated into a sustainable commercial reality. And here is that opportunity. And the onus, of course, lies on the parties whose rights are enshrined by the treaty, the member states, corporate entities, private citizens, and those whose rights have been abrogated to approach the CCJ and to seek relief. So in a nutshell, that is the issue, and that is the intended solution. And I hope to be able to do everything within my power, and together with my group in the UK and the group in the Eastern Caribbean, to give rise to a successful judgment and the restoration of desperately needed rights. Thank you.
The following is an excerpt from Let's Get Down to Business on IKTV, where Mr. Tony Regisford discusses the current British American policyholders' legal action with Bacol's president, Dr. Patrick Antoine.
You know, I think that you're going at the British American part of the claims. I understand very well that the CRICO people are not part of this, at least not now. But back in 2009, at that global credit crunch, global economic collapse, rather, compounded by the collapse of CLF, what sort of chunk did it take out of the GDPs of the various countries, in particular St. Vincent, to be specific.
Yeah.
The actual figure that
yes. So in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, let me give you the big picture. So we're talking just on the part of Bacol. We're talking about liabilities, if you wish, investments. In terms of principal sums, not interest, just principal sums that policyholders would have invested in the annuity instruments. We're talking about a figure that's just shy of about $1 billion, just over 900 and something million Eastern Caribbean dollars. Yeah, so we're talking about just shy of $1 billion Eastern Caribbean dollars with a B, billion.
St. Vincent or the Caribbean?
No, this is the entire OECS. The OECS figure, but only for Bacol, British American Insurance Company Limited. This is the entire OECS, just short of 1 billion Eastern Caribbean dollars. 1 billion. 900 and something million dollars is what we're talking about. And these are for all the currencies because they took annuity policies both in Eastern Caribbean dollars and US dollars. So for those listening who are aware of that, I've put both figures together, just short of 1 billion Eastern Caribbean dollars. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the liabilities only for St. Vincent and the Grenadines was about 192 million Eastern Caribbean dollars. Again, 192 million Eastern Caribbean dollars. And that is only for the Bacol policies. And at the time, in 2009, if you look at the GDP in 2009, that would have amounted to about 10.5% of the GDP in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for 1 year. So that's a 10%, 10.5% fraction, which in economics is substantial.
Very substantial.
Very substantial. And that number would vary across the countries. But for instance, in Antigua, it would be about 12%. They had the largest allotment in terms of the liabilities. In Grenada, it ranged between, I want to say, 8 and 9% of GDP. So across the entire OECS, the impact was substantial when you think about what we are fighting for every year to get a 2 or 3% increase in GDP. If the central bank tells us if we can achieve a growth rate in GDP of about 6%, we're doing extremely well. But most of us have only been able to achieve, in good years, an average of about 3%. When you talk about 10.5%, you're talking about losing your growth rate being 0 for about 3 years. So that's really what we're talking about. It's substantial.
Correct. And I want to make the point that, or to repeat the point, that you're only talking about Bacol because there was, I believe, a significant set of liabilities in the CLICO end of things, but we're not really discussing that on this program. We're coming up to our first break. When we come back from the break, I want to explore how we're going to go about addressing the claims that the collective claim that you're going to make, and how people who have been burnt, for want of a better word, can have some form of redress through the actions that you are about to undertake. When we come back from the break.
Great.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
Welcome back to Let's Get Down to Business. I'm chatting with Dr. Patrick Antoine and Simon Davenport. Simon, I believe you're all the way in Brussels, I'm told. 6 hour time difference now?
Yeah, actually, right now I'm in Austria.
Oh, you're in Austria.
My wife's Austrian. Yeah, but same time difference. So yeah, it's a fairly rainy, muggy 5 p.m. afternoon in Austria.
Right, because, well, 5 p.m. now because we're recording this program earlier. But
yeah, true.
Simon, how do we get to the point that you and Dr. Antoine is hoping to take all the people who are making these, well, you're collectively making this claim. Yeah. How are we going to get from this point to success, which I know you're hoping for?
Indeed.
What are the steps?
Okay, well, Tony, that's the key question you've asked there. So what we are doing is bringing a claim, a court case in the Caribbean Court of Justice, relying upon obligations of equal treatment, non-discriminatory treatment in the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. And we're bringing an application for the case to be heard. It's called, Tony, an application for special leave to commence proceedings. And it's asking the court to see that there is merit in the case to allow it to go forward to a full hearing. So it's a two-stage process. It's happening, if you don't mind me saying, for international court standards in a pretty quick way. The CCJ is a court that moves pretty quickly. Has the huge advantage of having no appeals from it. So it's one hearing or one set of proceedings. It doesn't get tied up endlessly in appeals and going off to the Privy Council. There's no room for that. It's a do or die application for special leave and then a court case to determine discriminatory behavior.
How, as a policyholder, how do I get to be part of this redress action, Dr. Antoine? How, I want to get justice, and I want to join your group to see if that's going to be successful.
Yes, so we, first of all, we have two small contributions that policyholders need to make to become part of what is in fact a private party action before the CCJ. And we repeat that because we held our hands believing earlier that the government in the multilateral discussions among states would have found a resolution. And of course, that didn't materialize. And this is why we're here. So we make the point so that our policyholders are clear that this is only a private party action and it has nothing to do with government or government finances. And the first thing you do is you make a contribution of 150 Eastern Caribbean dollars just to become a member of Bacol, which is to join with the rest of us. So for instance, as the president, I myself would have made that contribution. And the second contribution is that depending on the value or quantum of your policy, your annuity policy, which is the amount that you would have invested with the agent, there is a second contribution, which is to defray the administrative cost. It's not the cost to the lawyers like Simon. It's just the administrative cost of preparing the material and getting the lawyers to, travel, as we've done on 2 occasions across the region, to huddle, to prepare the case, to finance research, courier cost. And I'm being pedantic because I want colleagues to understand that these are costs that need to be met because they do add up. We've been at this for about 7.5 years in total. And, we've had people go and sit to do legal research at the Geneva Graduate Institute of Law. We had to pay for tickets for them to get there. And, if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be here now. So your contribution if you have a $200,000 investment policy in Eastern Caribbean dollars, you would only pay $1,200 in terms of your contribution to the administrative cost. So it's extremely reasonable, and that's the sum of it. Now, the way that Simon and others are paid is important for colleagues to know, and we're very open about this. We couldn't afford the quality legal advice that we had. In fact, I will tell you that we got absolutely no takers at the beginning of this campaign. And we're very happy after developing the case to have had Simon agree to take this on board with a team of attorneys, and they get paid 20% on the back end only if we are successful. So if we're not successful, they're not paid for all of the legal work they've done, literally thousands of hours and 3.5 years of work in the case of Simon and his case. They get absolutely nothing, which of course speaks from our perspective as the executive of Bacol to the strength that they must believe we have in this matter, to have invested such just valuable time in it that we could not otherwise have paid for up front. So that's really all there is to it. And for those who cannot afford at this time for one reason or another, and this particularly arose from the circumstances earlier in Dominica with the hurricane, and of course more recently with the volcano in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But for any reason, the elderly people who have used all of their investments and now are essentially struggling month to month, and for whom unexpected expenses even of $100 is a lot. We've created a special facility which is no risk financing, wherefore the amount that I would have quoted, and this amount, let me repeat, is going to vary. If you have a smaller policy, it's going to be much less. If you have a larger policy, it's going to be a little more. But this amount I've spoken about, which is the contribution to the administrative expenses, you can finance that. What do I mean by that? Well, you can borrow the amount, this $1,200 that I use as an example. It was only an example for the $200,000 policy. You can borrow that $1,200 from an entity that we got to agree to do this out of Grenada, MiFi, and they will take 1% if you are successful, but you don't have to pay anything. You don't have to pay any principal or interest. All you do is you borrow that from them, and they absorb all the risk. And you don't have any payment to them when the case is settled. If we are successful, by the grace of God, I think we will be, and we can speak that way as policyholders. That's very different to the line Simon has to follow based on his own legal precepts. But as policyholders, we feel very strongly that there's a God of justice that does not sleep. So when we are successful, they will take 1%, only 1% from whatever your total contributions back. Let us just say the fees that the court awards back to us in terms of your investments. They will get 1% of that. In the meantime, you have nothing to pay, and if we're not successful, dear God, then you have nothing to pay. So it's a foolproof way of making sure that for persons who are vulnerable, for persons who fall on hard times, for persons who, for one reason or another, are just not able to come up with this contributions to the administrative costs, you can still participate in the march by policyholders to the CCJ by essentially joining and benefiting from this facility.
Let's look at the roadmap. Well, before I get there, you are depending, I take it, on some form of critical mass. I mean, you can't just have 5 people sign up. It's obviously not going to go forward if only 5 people sign up. So I think obviously you've gone on a drive to the more the merrier. But what's your critical mass really? What's your minimum sort of take up that will allow you to go forward, meeting your administrative costs and, covering the financial requirements, that would meet the expenses to drive this thing forward? What's your minimum?
Thanks a lot. Well, interesting question. The way we've looked at this matter is really, what would we want to appear before the court with in terms of having, just as you said, this critical mass, the scale? And there are just over $800 million worth of investment funds out there that have not been reimbursed, compensated back to the policyholders who would have made them in the first instance. So out of this amount, I would have quoted for you earlier, of just short of $1 billion, 900 and something million Eastern Caribbean dollars. What remains outstanding is over 800 million Eastern Caribbean dollars. And what we've targeted is we would really love to have 80 to 85% of that, under our belt. We are practical, and right now our first target is pitching at about $500 million, and we are fast advancing to that target. And then, of course, we're going to set another target when it comes close to us, as it were, closing the opportunity for policyholders to participate with us, because it has to close at some stage. But we are closing in very rapidly on that amount. And in terms of the numbers of policyholders, it's difficult to tell. Let me tell you why, but then I will give you a number. It's difficult because you, Tony, can have, for instance, you can have 3 or 4 policies. So it's you alone, but you may have a policy for each of your children. You may have a policy for someone else that is important to you, for your employees, etc. So in terms of persons, by looking at the number of policies which we have, in terms of the numbers of policies, for confidentiality reasons that Simon would have raised earlier, we don't know who the person is until they come to us, and they have to self-declare, because we don't have the names to protect the confidentiality of persons who, for one reason or another, may choose that they just can't be bothered, or they don't want this information disclosed about them. And we have had 1 or 2 cases of those. So in terms of having taken that into account, we are all men and women who I think are shrewd enough to understand the way that patterns work with numbers. And I want to say that when we look at the patterns that we've seen with the numbers, we are well over 2,000 and something individuals and institutions. And this is important because, for instance, there's one institution in Grenada that has, in terms of its paid-up membership, it has about 7,000 members. So you have the monies for 7,000 individuals represented by one entity. So when we speak to that, we explain all of this because this has so touched the OECS civilization that when we get to court, we may well have over 3,000, right, individual policyholders, but the number of persons that they represent is substantially greater. There's one institution, it's a farmers organization that we are now working with to get them on board in terms of the decisions of their board. They want to do it. They on the books, they represent over 10,000 farmers. Actively, they represent over 5,000 farmers. So when you have one policy, what you're talking about is it affecting the lives of 5,000 people who would have deposited funds directly. And then if I were to tell you that in the Eastern Caribbean, the numbers are about 3.5 to 4 persons for every 1 person that is either employed or engages in economic activity, then you and I can do the math. So this farmers organization, really, you're talking about 10,000 farmers, 5,000 active by 4. You're talking about 20,000 Grenadians from one single institution. The population of Grenada is 120,000. And that's one institution. In the case of Antigua, you're talking about other plans and schemes where people, contributory plans and schemes where many other persons would have put funds in as well. Ditto, Grenada. Same example. So when you start looking at this across an OECS population of 500 million persons, on a good day, with our diaspora back and with some tourism, 600,000. That's the OECS population. OECS strong, 600,000. When I start doing the math for you, you start to see how important this is. So we do this so that everyone understands that the number of policies really does not give you a true reflection. But it's important to start there. But where we end up is that this has affected so many people, including people in the diaspora. In Canada, in the United States, there's one person from St. Vincent and the Grenadines who has a substantial amount of funds that he would have sent back over the years, working from Canada. He unfortunately has fallen on very hard times, and it breaks my heart because he called me living from a car. He's in vagrancy, but all of his money is in British America, and I subsequently, of course, put him on to one of our claims managers, right? These are the sorts of heartbreak stories that we're talking about. So yes, the numbers, we've given you that. We've given you what the real impact would be as a percentage or component of the OECS population. And then under each of these are these really heart-wrenching stories, man, that really makes this worth something fighting for.
British American insurance policyholders have lost so much. Register now with your case manager for an opportunity to recover your investment.
I had to do surgeries, about several surgeries in Canada. Therefore, I needed my money then. That is what we save your money for. Look at where you're meeting me now. I am sick. In January, I had a neurological problem that I collapsed. I have to walk with a stick. At my age, I'm 74, almost 75 years. And I cannot sit home and retire like a sick person. I am on medication. I need to see a neurologist. They told me, the doctors told me finally, but I don't have money to go anywhere.
And then in 2013, they refund me a meager $30,000. And with that $30,000, it never reached my hand because I owed the bank. It hit me hard.
The church invested over $500,000. Over $500,000. And because of the collapse, there are many, many things we are unable to do, including even paying our ministers. We are unable to do outreach programs. You know, we are a Christian body. We go into the communities. We help people less fortunate, and there are a number of things we do as a church. And of course, we have overhead operating expenses and all that. And we are really, really in a financial bind because of this whole collapse.
My mom, she lost both her savings and my cousins, her niece, my cousin's life savings. That was her main regret.
My insurance broker used to come and collect insurance because I was insured with the house was insured with him. And he told me about this investment. He said, had a little bit of money in the bank and I was getting 6% at the time. And he told me, if you invest that money with us, we could give you 8%. That investment was to boost my pension. To boost my pension. I mean, I'm getting a little pension, but after 32 years, it don't match up. I mean, do you think of the cost of living 32 years ago to now? So I had that little money there. I said, well, that will give me a little bit extra interest to boost my pension. As the cost of living goes up, you don't keep in line with the pension. So that's the position I'm in now.
As an agent, you mean every month, 5% of my income, of my commissions, was paid into a pension fund. The pension come to me. I had to start from scratch. As a manager, I was affected. As a client, I was affected because I had investments too. So I lost money like anybody else.
It hit me hard because I'm going to tell you what. 3 of my 4 boys was in college. They had to pull out. I had to dig real deep to save these lands. I used to sit in the bush and cry. Even my wife wanted to further her study and she couldn't. I nearly lost my family.
Give us our monies. Give us our monies. It's not a want, it's a need. And I can't overemphasize the need, especially at this time. We have members suffering, people who are unemployed. We have members who have disability problem issues, who have health issues.
When you are not able to meet needs, that is what caused me to get this discomfort, this imbalance. Because the stress of it.
I feel betrayed. I feel conned. whatever word you could use to describe, you know, that's how I feel.
It's not fair. It cannot be fair.
Boy, I want my money if interest, behave yourselves, you know. Bacol, hey, I want to tell all you go for it, because not only me, but lots of senior citizens like me are suffering. Their lifetime savings, some of them came from England with their little money in the bank, and they take it and trust British American with it. That is serious business. And it would mean so much to me.
I just hope that the Lord spare my life to be alive still when this thing comes through.
Registration closes soon. Don't miss this opportunity for fair and just compensation. Contact your case manager now for more information.
Attention, British American insurance policy holders. Wednesday, September 15th is the registration deadline for your policy to become part of the Bacol legal action before the Caribbean Court of Justice. If you have misplaced your documents, you are still eligible to register. Beneficiaries and survivors of deceased policyholders and beneficiaries are also eligible. Contact your case managers for verification. Bacol, financial justice within reach.